Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm Elliott Margolis. I'm here in studio for the first time in a long time with my co-hosts Gail Burke and George Binns, and it's really nice to be back in the studio, I have to say.
It is.
It's even nice to see some of the people that work here in the studio, don't you think? Okay, enough of that. We're here now to talk about an issue that's been really important throughout the country, and it's driving a lot of people. It's helping to divide the country even more than we're already divided, and that's a shame. And what I'm talking about is critical race theory. Now, we're here to talk about what is critical race theory, why is it being taught in the schools, why are people so upset about it being taught in the schools? And it's kind of an interesting topic. So, Gail, why don't you start telling us what you think?
Okay. Well, first of all, critical race theory is a neo-Marxist theory designed to foster racial conflict and social division in Western societies. It has been embraced by the American Medical Association, surprisingly. Well, the AMA rejects the concepts of equality and meritocracy, long considered guiding principles of Western societies. A note here, only 25% of practicing physicians actually belong to the AMA, so keep that in mind. Is it critical race in a school near you? Well, it's kind of difficult to find out, but COVID has had one positive thing, and that's that parents have become aware of actually what is being studied in the classroom, and many of them have found critical race theory. It's not always called critical race theory, but it's there, and it's, as Elliott said, it's dividing the country. It teaches children that blacks are put upon and they're victims, and whites are supremacy. So, take it from there, George.
Well, the first problem I have is there is no such thing as race in the species Homo sapiens. Our distant cousins, the pan-troglodytes, they've got 3 to 5 races, chimpanzees, but we have none. So we're talking about a non-problem. And race was invented, the concept of race was invented by the elites so that they can feel good about colonialization. And we can look down at those people over there that we're beating up. And you get into the details of it, and it's being used as an excuse, I think, to start a riot, to start a problem, to create a problem, and they're making a problem out of it. And I'm with Morgan Freeman. I like his comment that since there is no such thing as race, if we stop talking about it, it'll go away. And this whole business about critical race theory goes way back, 1970 is way back, when it was really called Critical Legal Studies. And they were getting into the issues of how some people, elites, are using the law to support their position and doing it at the disadvantage of various minority groups. And the minority groups keep changing. So it's not always people of African heritage, that is, the ones in the low-rent district, because, again, back in the 1970s, the dirty word was WASPs. If you were a WASP, you were the equivalent to an old white man right now. Well, WASP is white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. And you start to think about, where are most of the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants? Oh, they're living in the Bible Belt. They're not terribly rich and not terribly in control of things. And they're in just as difficult a situation as some of the minorities living in the cities. So this gets to be a very selective process of, okay, who is the one we're going to use as the scapegoat for this problem, and who is the one that we're going to label as the victims and put them up on a pedestal? So it's rather arbitrary, as you started to point out.
Well, let me ask you, Gail. Did you have a choice when you were born whether you were going to be white or a female?
Neither one.
Okay, how about you, George? You're not a female, but I mean, did you have a choice of being white or a male?
No, of course not. I mean,
okay. Did you, when you were out playing with kids, did it matter to you whether they were white, black, or whatever, Asian, whatever? Did it matter to you?
Well, it was a different situation back then because there weren't any minorities around.
Right.
Okay, but
it depends. Again, it's a situation where, depending on where you live, there's always going to be us versus them.
Right, but
but the point I'm getting to is, when I was growing up, Italians were considered people of color. This is 60, 70 years ago now, and things have changed. There's always an us versus them, and you can always identify them, and Irish need not apply. I mean, Boston is notorious for those signs that were around. So there's always this tribalism that's built into our evolution from way back when.
But hatred or, segregation or anything is a taught thing. You're not born disliking somebody. That's a taught thing. That's sort of like in the Israeli-Palestinian thing. People learn to either love each other or they learn to hate each other, but it's taught.
Yeah, that's exactly the phrase that showed up in South Pacific, the movie.
Right. Yeah.
There's a song in there talking about race relations or ethnicity relations, and the line in there is, you've got to be taught. You've got to teach them when they're young. Mm. So this is not a new problem.
It's not a new problem. It's been in the colleges for many years. And somehow the people pushing this have figured out that, well, when the kids get to college, not all of them are going to believe what we're talking about. We have to go back and get the kids when they're very, very young.
Yeah.
We'll get the kids and we'll indoctrinate them and feed them all the propaganda that we want. And by the time they get to college, there won't be anybody disagreeing with what we have to say. And that's what's happened. Now, these little kids are getting it. And they're being taught that, okay, if you're white, you go over one side of the room. If you're black, you go over here. Or a child of color, any color, doesn't matter, except for Asians. The Asians are very put upon as well.
Oh, yeah.
So then they teach the kids, if you're black, Asian, brown, whatever, you're the victim. And over here are the white people, and they're the ones that are making you the victim. And it's been recorded.
Oh, yeah.
And parents know this is going on. The kids are coming home and telling their parents. And parents try to find out more, and they're blocked.
Yeah, it's stonewalled.
I mean, there's no question when this country was founded, okay, the black community was, they weren't a full person. According to the Constitution.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Well, there's some debate about that.
And women weren't allowed to vote. But can anybody tell me what country is better than this country?
No.
And look at how we've evolved. Yes, now women can vote.
That's the important point, evolved.
Yeah.
Right.
Because just like everything else, culture evolves. Things that were acceptable way back when are no longer acceptable. And some things that were unacceptable way back then, it's okay to do that now.
But the 3/5 rule was not demeaning blacks, other than it was done for tax purposes, because most blacks were not free men and they were not taxpayers. That's where the 3/5 came in.
But keep in mind, it was black people in Africa that were selling the slaves
That's right.
to us.
That's right.
Okay? And that was part of the culture back then. Well, we changed that culture, and there's no longer slavery in this country. Now, there's plenty of slavery in other countries,
Yeah.
but not in this country.
And every country has had slavery in one form or another. The Native Americans held their counterparts as hostages, and
But-
they treated them as slaves when they took over from one tribe to another.
Oh, yeah.
But when you moved west, were you involved in killing any Indians?
No, of course not.
Okay. So why are you blamed for it now?
Well, another question is, I saw a picture, I think it was an email, of a Japanese baby, and the caption under it was,
Oh, yeah.
"Is this baby responsible for Pearl Harbor?"
Right.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
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 It's the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we have evolved. Why is it that so many people from other countries want to come to this country?
Yeah.
If we're so terrible, if we're so racist, why do they want to come here? And one thing I've noticed in my work, okay, I have a number of black customers. And I talk to them. Part of my job is kibitzing a little bit, okay, and I'm talking to them. And, when they're not from this country, I have customers from Jamaica, I have customers from Ghana. They love this country. They appreciate this country. And as a matter of fact, a couple of my customers work with the minority communities to tell the kids, no, we don't want to steal. We don't want to do this or that. We want to be part of this great country that they appreciate because of where they came from. So this whole critical race theory of blaming whites and calling us racists, we're such a racist country where 13% of the population is black, and yet we elected a black president twice. 87% of the people helped elect a black person president of the United States. Is that racist?
Well, we could also cite other instances of how blacks, Hispanic, Asians had become very successful in this country. If they lived somewhere else, the chances are they would not have become that successful, because we offer the opportunity to be whatever you wish to be. Other countries do not. In some countries, you're born in a certain station and you never can advance from that. You're stuck there. That's another reason why people like to come here, because they know the opportunity is here. The problem with critical race theory is they're not talking about equal opportunity. They're talking about equity. And that's what's happened in the schools.
Well,
they're trying to provide equity.
Well,
you
that-
cannot say that everybody that experiences certain things is going to come out equal. It's not.
Well, that's another one of the things that bothers me about this whole business of politically correct. You can back it up to there.
That's right.
When you start with a word like equity has a certain financial meaning. You buy a house, you get a mortgage, you start paying off the mortgage. As you pay off the mortgage, you own a bigger piece of your house and the bank owns less. And that's equity. Now they're trying to make equity come out to be fairness, and as you pointed out, everybody ends up in the same place, and that's impossible. Hey, I'm 5'10". I used to be 5'10 and a half. I used to weigh 180 pounds. I thought I was in good shape. The chances of me becoming a professional athlete in any sport, slim to none. And you have noticed my spelling is very creative.
You're an engineer, George. It's expected.
That's the point I'm getting to, that the chances of me being a teacher of a foreign language or even an English teacher is again slim to none. But hey, I like math. I relate to math. I can become an engineer. So that people start off with a certain characteristic, and you make the best of that characteristic, but you can't really become anything you want to be. That's where this fallacy of equity, I think, comes in, that everybody's going to be a professional athlete. Not no, but hell no. And it's the same thing that anything you want, you can't create something out of a different characteristic.
And that's why, and this came in with Common Core as well.
Oh, yeah.
We have to lower the bar so that everybody is the same. As you pointed out, everybody isn't and will never be the same. So why not capitalize on the good things that you can do and not cry in your beer about the things that you can't do? And this is part of what this CRT is doing to these children. And it's pushing them into areas where they're confused. They don't know what to do. They haven't been brought up to believe that they're bad because of their skin color. Certainly Martin Luther King didn't believe that at all.
Yeah. And that's one of his quotes from the speech that he made.
I had a dream.
Yeah, I have a dream. And where he said wants to be
judged by your character, not your color of your skin.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
Content of your
So,
character.
and the point of equity of everybody coming out the same way doesn't work. How the hell would the country run if all we had was just English teachers? Or just nurses with no doctors?
That's right.
This is the diversity that comes with the different characteristics you're born with and where you end up. And that's what it takes to run a country. You need this kind of spread of all sorts of skills and abilities.
And look at, for instance, let's talk about the athletes for a minute, because they're the ones that have really started a lot of this silliness.
Yeah.
Okay? What other country in the entire world can you play a sport for 6 months of the year, make $20 million a year? Okay? There is no other place. Now, if you want to have quotas, which of course critical race wants quotas and things like that, fine, let's have quotas. 13% of the National Basketball Association should be black, no more. Okay? 13% of the NFL should be black, no more. According to that theory, you don't go by whether you earn your position. You go by it's your turn.
Yeah.
Okay? And that doesn't do any of us any good. I don't care. I mean, I have a number of women doctors, and a couple of them are minorities. So what? All I care about is they know their job and they take care of me the way you would want to be taken care of. It doesn't make any difference. But I don't want a affirmative action doctor taking care of me because I don't know how good they are.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's earn your way, and that's what this country has done for years, and we've evolved into this type of thing. Now, yeah, is it perfect? No. Show me a more perfect place.
That's right. Well, the thing that bothers me, too, is that Joe Biden recently signed an executive order to advance diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, DEIA, in the federal workforce. DEIA is a euphemism for critical race theory. They found now that the U.S. Air Force Academy is teaching critical race theory, which is, again, should not be done. Some Seattle schools are telling children, second graders, that cops are racist and they're pushing a left-wing agenda. The schools are not meant to teach activism.
And they're not meant to teach lies either, because
That's
if you
right.
look at FBI statistics, you find that there is no systemic racism in this country. Zero systemic racism. Are there a couple of bad cops? Absolutely. Are there a couple of bad everything? Absolutely. But most are good. And, you know, I've seen this on Facebook too. Something like, you know, why do cops need more training if the parents have had the chance to train their kids for 18 years and can't do it right? You know, you need to. I remember when I was a kid, I used to respect the police. I used to respect teachers. Now you can't. Poor teachers can't even have discipline in their classroom. Without discipline, you have no education. It's the parents that are part of the problem here. And that's because we let them get away. I was talking earlier about the fact that the United States has more people in prison than any other country in the world. Why do you think that is? Because we don't treat prisoners the way people who commit crimes, we don't punish them enough. Other countries give you a deterrent if you've committed a crime.
Severe penalties.
Okay?
Yeah.
In this country, we don't give anybody a deterrent. In New York, they're letting people go without even a bail.
Yeah.
How is that helping? It's helping more crime.
Well, I think what's beginning to happen now, and it's, again, due to COVID, and people's understanding what their children are actually learning and not learning in school, homeschooling is up. More and more homeschoolers have decided that they don't like government schools, they don't like what's being taught, and they're going to do it themselves. Well, not everybody can do that, but if you want to sacrifice, make a few sacrifices along the way, you only have these children in your control for 18 years. After that, and even when you send them off to school, even when you send them off to school, the way the schools are now, they're teaching the exact opposite of what you really want your children to learn. And they're trying to get them younger and younger. You get them in daycare, they get them as young as 2 and 3 years old, and they start teaching this garbage. And that is frightening.
Well, part of the problem is that it's an economic situation, and it's to the point where a single parent has got a real problem supporting any family at all. And even if you've got two parents, both of them have to work to afford a house and the rest of the amenities that current society expects. And going back to the point you were talking about the military, Senator Tom Cotton explained that critical race theory forces the military personnel to concentrate on their differences instead of bonding to create a strong unit. So it's a diversity is really driving people apart. And in a military operation, if you can't depend on the guy behind you or the gal behind you to cover your back, how do you fight? How do you function?
You don't.
And I think it's very critical in the military operation, but it's also very important in any operation.
Well, and the
any way you
scary
have
part,
a business.
The scary part is, George, that the Air Force Academy is denying that they're teaching this.
Well, that's another problem,
Secretary, I think it's the Secretary of Defense has also denied this. When it's out there, it's blatant. It is being taught.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have about 4 minutes remaining, so let's go for it.
Well, it seems to me that critical race theory is being used as a political device to divide the country. It's something that doesn't exist. I mean, let's face it. We're all human, okay? And at least I think so. You are, aren't you, George?
Last I checked, yeah.
And being human, we have our own prejudices. And there's nothing you can do about that. You're always going to want somebody you're familiar with as opposed to somebody that you're not familiar with. And so we're always going to have these prejudices. You're always going to have somebody that is a white nationalist. You're always going to have somebody that's a racist. You're always going to have somebody that's anti-Semitic. You can't get away from that because people have certain prejudices. But it's really an insignificant number. And the only way we can try and avoid it is to teach that it's not right. But to divide the country the way that we're dividing the country is just absolutely unacceptable.
Well, that's part of the problem, is that they're trying to make this thing into a zero-sum game. There's only so much stuff to go around, and I got to have mine. And if I got mine, that's okay. But if you get something, it's some of mine that you got to give up. And really, we got to get back to the idea of making a bigger pie so that there's more pieces of the pie that can be handed out to everybody or people can earn. And the point you're making about you've got to be taught, I think, is extremely important. You don't pick up on these things by just walking around on the street. We are evolved from a tribal operation, and you depend upon your tribe to protect you and help you. And when you see somebody that's not a member of your tribe, you have to make a judgment. Are they good guys or bad guys? How do I know about them? Well, if nobody has taught you about them, you have to take a very precautionary approach and be very careful about how you advance towards them. But once you get over the idea that, hey, we're all in the same boat, we're all Americans, we're all got the same DNA. One of my favorite ones is Jefferson proved at least a half a dozen times that skin color is not an impediment to breeding. We're all the same kind of people.
Well, for the most part, we all want the same things. But in today's society, we have great divisions, and they're being promoted on the basis of race. When George Floyd died, he was a black man killed by a white cop. It was a terrible thing. But that was a catalyst for a lot of this stuff. And now he's hailed as a hero. He wasn't a hero.
Well, that's the problem, that there's a whole bunch of stuff that's been bubbling under the surface, and nobody addresses it until you have one of these major incidents, and then all hell breaks loose, and we have another riot. And the nasty part of it is we've had numbers of these riots, and they've never accomplished a damn thing.
Oh, no, they've destroyed certain buildings and they've killed some people.
There's no positive outcome from any of these. And we have a commission that looks at them and looks at, oh, yeah, and these things happen. Get the same answers from the commission, but no action.
Well, I think that we have to end our discussion here, but I think we need to do more shows on this because it's a huge category of subjects that we can tackle. And especially when it hits home and when it comes to your community, and it's here. I think the parents need to understand you have to find out, is this being taught in your schools? And you find that out by looking at the work that your children are doing, look at what they're reading especially, because there are a lot of books, children's books, geared to promote this critical race theory and to further divide our communities and our country. So until we have another opportunity to present a show like this, we want to thank you for watching, and I want to thank you guys for, doing your homework. We always do our homework, but I mean, this is This is something that really
Yeah.
requires a lot of time and effort to delve into. So again, thank you for watching, and we hope you'll be with us next time.